I'm back with episode 3 of season 4 of Star Trek Strange New Worlds, Human Best Friend. This episode starts off with the entire Alpha Shift, which is basically the cast we know, none of the lower decks, no pun intended, in a collective grumpy mood from nonstop working for weeks. The beef between Ortegas and Scotty is elevated due to the stress. But honestly, the writers did not present this well. It started in a previous episode where Scotty installed alarms on the bridge where Ortegas pilots the ship because he felt that she piloted it too aggressively.
It doesn't make any sense.
Agreed. How does one pilot too aggressively in a starship? You enter a destination and tell the engines which warp factor to go. It's not like she's off-roading. There's no gravity or potholes in space. If the engineer has concerns about the ship due to the pilot, they would need to take it up with the captain. This is just a hackneyed way to get these characters mad at each other. I mean, when in Star Trek, hundreds of episodes of a dozen or more shows and movies, when has the engineer ever complained about the way the pilot pilots? It was a really lame excuse to get them to manufacture a way for them to be angry with each other. Una tells Pike about how everyone is fatigued and it's showing. He states that he needs everyone sharp for an upcoming peace negotiation he has to spearhead. So she suggests they stop off at Cesnar Grand, a pleasure planet with an intoxicating atmosphere, literally, that is guaranteed to relax the crew. It was nice to see Dave Foley as Dendrew, the host of the facility, which has a strict no-technology policy. He brought some funny moments that unfortunately the rest of the cast mostly did not. They take a shuttle down to the planet instead of beaming. Why? Because the writers need the shuttle as a plot device. But in the reality of Star Trek,
It doesn't make any sense.
when Dendrew states in the Cesnar Grand promo that it's a tech-free zone, they really needed to add a line like, "No beaming allowed," or something like that. This is a glaring problem, but the writers don't see it for some reason. And what's up with the standard 20th century conference room chairs in the shuttlecraft? Couldn't they have made it look at least a little futuristic? Once the crew opens the shuttle door, they immediately begin experiencing the effects of the planet's intoxicating atmosphere. They dissolve to a Tribble running around, and we see Ortegas waking up with a hangover. Not only is this supposed to be a comedic episode, it's basically a mini version of the movie, The Hangover. She discovers Scotty in a Mugato costume in her room, and they argue, then try to remember how they got there. Scotty is drunk from the air, but then Ortegas asks this.
Why am I not drunk?
Good question. A knock on the door reveals Dendrew, who gives an envelope to Ortegas stating it's for Pike and explains why Ortegas is hungover.
Sometimes if you're hanging on to negative emotions, it can negate or alter the effects of the atmosphere.
The first place they look is Spock's room. He states he's totally shit-faced, but he acts the same as his stoic self. He asks if Ortega and Scotty can see Jim Kirk in the room, but they think he's hallucinating. He tells them Pike was probably in Uhura's room as she is having a party. After they leave, we see Spock really is imagining Kirk in the room. He surmises it might be a remnant of their mind meld in the Season 3 finale, New Worlds and New Civilizations. More on this later. After stopping by Uhura's room to no avail, they find Una singing Total Eclipse of the Heart in Klingon. These jokes are falling really flat for me from this episode. I didn't find much of this to be funny at all. They turn around, bright eyes, see what I did there, to find Mabenga tending bar, and he has this funny exchange with Scotty.
Where's that?
It's green.
This is a callback to the Toss Season 2, Episode 22, by any other name.
That's green.
And the TNG Season 6, Episode 22, Relics.
It is green.
Notice they didn't have Data use the contraction of "it is," because he's not supposed to use contractions.
I've been programmed with a listing of 1,400.
I've?
You have used a verbal contraction.
You said I've instead of I have.
It is a skill my program has never mastered.
Despite the fact that they screwed that up several times.
But you sound like a Vulcan.
No, sir. I'm an android. At least we're acquainted with the judge, Captain.
Data? You all right?
Yes, sir. I'm fine.
They finally find Pike and discover he's getting a tattoo. He reads his letter to discover that the Rhodaxian contingents are en route to Cesnar Grand, despite the fact that the Enterprise wasn't due on their homeworld to negotiate the peace accord for 2 weeks. So how did the Rhodaxians discover that the crew took a detour? And if it was going to take the Rhodaxians a couple hours to get there, why was it going to take the Enterprise 2 weeks? Are the writers even paying attention, or does their air make them drunk too? And I know I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Anson Mount is having the most fun out of all the actors. Pike tells Ortegas and Scotty to get the shuttle, but when they go to the garage carousel, they discover it's missing. They realize whoever took it must have the duotronic processing chip needed to start it. I guess that's the keys to the shuttle? Scotty says they can find it with his tricorder, but he left it on the shuttle. However, they do know of someone who would never go anywhere without a tricorder. They go to get Uhura's tricorder, but she forces them to make up first. Great, can we move on from this manufactured spat that they're having? They apologize to each other, and she gives them her tricorder. Scotty uses it and says he can see the shuttle, then he tosses the tricorder to Ortegas, but misses, and it goes over a balcony and shatters into a million pieces. I'm surprised Starfleet tech isn't stronger than that. And this whole thing about the tricorder is stupid. It's just a waste of a few minutes of screen time. They need the tricorder so badly, but then they immediately break it, which means they're right back to square one. So why waste the time to even get it for a few moments? So they decide to hack the resort's computer, and they know just who can do that. They take Spock to some office and can't find the computer. Spock wonders if a plant on the desk uses photosynthetic technology.
Photosynthetic technology?
Right there with you, Jimmy boy. So he mind melds with the plant. This is more of what serves as humor for this episode, although I didn't find it funny at all. But what's really bizarre is that Spock somehow sees a diagram of the shuttle on the roof of a building, and he knows it's in an area of the city run by thieves. What?
It doesn't make any sense.
How in the hell did Spock know where the shuttle was by mind melding with a plant? This feels like the writers were high as fuck when they wrote this. How can the actors read these lines without asking, how does this make any sense? And then Ortegas and Scotty freeze in these awkward poses just to deliver the hysterical line,
Are you both plants right now?
so that they can show the duo as a plant and a cactus. I don't know, maybe little kids would find this funny, but I thought it was painfully stupid. Since Spock somehow divined that there were bad guys guarding the shuttle, they need to get some backup in the form of La'an, who, it turns out, is a mean drunk. So she goes and beats up the gang leader, and in doing so, she becomes their new leader and must win something from Scotty and Ortegas to look good in their eyes. So she gives them Scotty's Hawaiian shirt, and they give up the location of the shuttle, which is sitting on the roof of a building, just like Spock somehow figured out. Scotty and Ortegas argue over where the duotronic processing chip, the keys, could be. In doing so, Ortegas pounds on the shuttle controls, which of course triggers the craft to spring to life and report that the key fob is 11 centimeters away. As Ortegas paces, it keeps getting closer and further away, until she figures out the keys have been in her cast the entire time. This was really far-fetched. The shuttle has sensors inside to determine how many centimeters away from the console the keys are? Suddenly, out of nowhere, and since this episode is going to be too short, the two are injected with a knockout drug and kidnapped. This is way out of left field. They awake tied to chairs and have some heart-to-heart when suddenly Dendru appears and unties them. He states that he was only doing what they begged him to do. Keep them away from the shuttle and tie them up if you have to. But we still don't know why. He tells them to stop by room C because one of the crew members is causing an issue. Since they forgot to give Chapel any screen time this episode, they cram this stupid scene in which she's aggressively playing bingo with a bunch of old lady aliens. Then for some reason, La'an and her new gang of thieves burst into the room to fight everyone. Now, see this guy on the left wearing Scotty's Hawaiian shirt? This is actually one of the funny moments of this episode. And, full disclosure, I kind of like when Spock says, he's still completely Spock. Very stoic, very logical. And he says, I'm sorry you had to see me in this state, stuff like that. Or in a couple episodes back when he was having a calm discussion with another Vulcan. And he goes up and tells Mbenga and Ortegas, I think it was, I'm sorry you had to see that spat. There was no spat. Those things are kind of funny. Most of everything else in the rest of this episode was not. Anyway, the crew escapes the fracas and reunites with everyone, and they get back on the shuttle. See, and now here's another funny moment when we first see Pike with a face tattoo. They get back to the ship to greet the Rodaxians for the peace talks, but they're still inebriated. Meanwhile, Scotty and Ortegas decide to fix up the shuttle, and while doing so, they have another heart-to-heart, find some commonalities, and patch things up. Is it just me, or does Martin Quinn's Scottish accent cause issues with anybody else? I actually had to turn on closed captioning to understand him. Maybe my ears are getting old. While fixing the shuttle, Scotty finds a mysterious device, a bomb. He states it has a reactive casing and he can't let go, else it goes boom. Ortegas gets Spock to help, and in the corridor, she freezes into another awkward position, which is just a lame excuse for Spock to report that he's still drunk because he thinks she looks like a cactus. This isn't funny, people. These are really lame attempts at humor. When Spock returns to the shuttle, he finds an isolinear recording chip. They watch it to discover it's drunken Scotty and Ortegas. Apparently, they both went to the shuttle and found that someone had tampered with it. They hadn't figured it out yet, but told themselves not to take the shuttle back to the Big E, as it might have something to do with disrupting the peace talks. This is the gelling moment. They determine that the shuttle needs to depart Enterprise, and Spock will beam Scotty back minus the bomb. But he can't pilot the shuttle while holding the bomb, so Ortegas volunteers to go with him. Spock assures them that he will beam them out a zeptosecond before the explosion. By the way, a zeptosecond is 1/60th of a second. But as we know, beaming is a process. It's not done in a flash. This would be impossible. Once again, the writers have written themselves into a corner, so they come up with something stupid to work their way out of it. As Spock preps the transporter, Kirk helps him out. Spock thinks he's still drunkenly hallucinating, but apparently he's not. And the real Jim Kirk slaps Spock across the face to prove it. Huh? Meanwhile, the shuttle explodes just outside the Enterprise, visible by Pike and the Rodaxians. And luckily, Spock was able to beam over Ortegas and Scotty in that 1 zeptosecond somehow. Also, it turns out that the bomb was made of Rodaxian materials honoring the peace accord. Wow, what a coinkydink. Scotty's thumb was injured, and as Ortegas takes him to sickbay, she surprises Spock by saying hi to Kirk, and he waves back. Yes, he's really there somehow. Apparently, he just so happened to be vacationing on Cesnar as well. I don't know which part of Spock's hallucinations on the planet were real or not. They didn't really define that. At the end, the crew all gather in the bar where Pike tells them that the Rodaxian militant who planted the bomb has been found. What Rodaxian militant? This is a case of tell, not show, but you should show, not tell. When they have to explain things that happen off screen that we don't get to see, it's just a shortcut to writing. And this episode was a little short. I think they could have expounded upon this a bit more. The wrap-up is when Ortegas goes to engineering to see what damage all of her use of the thrusters does to the engines, which is really stupid, as I pointed out earlier. This episode wanted to be more than it was. Lame jokes, bad narrative, vague explanations. Aside from maybe a few chuckles, it was a nebulous mess. Let's hope for something better next week. Live long and prosper.